Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Taufik Nur Rahman. I want to represent about legal protection against culture through Unesco World Heritage Center. Okay, let's begin. The discussion about the need for protection for culture has become an important issue today. This is due to the rampant claims against Indonesian culture which foreign countries claim ownership of recently. The issue of the protection of Indonesian culture began to become hot in recent years, when the issue of alleged claims against of the Reok Ponorogo and Pendet Dins by Malaysia was widely published in the mass media. However, this issue has actually been a matter of debate at the international level since 2001. When the first session of the Governmental Committee on Intellectual Property and Genetic Resources, Traditional Knowledge and Folklore was held at the WIPO headquarters in Geneva, Switzerland. In fact, the substance of traditional knowledge and traditional cultural expressions has been the subject of debate since 1967, when the Berne Convention for the Protection of Literary and Artistic Works added Article 15.4, which states that works that haven't been published and which are not known to their creators can be protected as copyright if it suspected that the creator is a citizen of party to the convention. In addition, state parties to this convention are required to designate the competent authority to provide protection. One of the cases of violation of cultural ownership that occurs is the case of claims of Indonesian culture by Malaysia in an advertisement on the Discovery Channel in Animatic Malaysia. The Pendet, Wayang, and Reok Ponorogo dances are aired, which are traditional Malaysian treasures. In fact, it is generally known that the three are expressions of traditional Indonesian culture. The use of traditional cultural expressions by foreigners also occurs in several countries. For example, in Las Vegas, USA, there is a hotel that uses design with typical Middle Eastern characteristics, especially Egypt, complete with merchandise indicating certain geography. Also in Seattle, USA, there are shops that sell products with certain characteristics, such as boomerangs, Indian hats, and products with design that are characterized by works of art from certain ethnic groups in various parts of the world. Culture is one type of creations that is produced by human intellectual abilities. In this case, the customary law community as creators or those who maintain and pass down the culture from generation to generation. Therefore, even though culture is the result of thinking from human intellectual abilities, it needs to be distinguished from other intellectual works. The difference is that culture is the result of the intellectual work of the community collectively or communally, whereas intellectual work generally focus more on works that are born from than the intellectual abilities of individuals. Although there are differences in the concept of cultures as belonging to the communal community and other individual copyright works, culture in Indonesia is regulated in the Copyright Law number 28 of 2014 concerning copyright, particularly in chapter 5 concerning traditional cultural expressions and protected works, article 38, which mentions culture as an expression of traditional culture. Regarding this traditional cultural expression, the state is give given the obligation which are contained in Article 38, paragraph 2 explicitly. The potential for violating cultural claims in Yogyakarta will always be there because the attraction of Yogyakarta is in cultural tourism. Even though until now, there have been no case of cultural conflict from Yogyakarta by other countries. Therefore, efforts are needed for preventive protection of cultural presentation in Yogyakarta. There are two traditional cultural expressions, namely tangible culture and tangible culture. For this research, it's more focused on intangible culture such as cultural values, traditional ceremonies and legends, saga, and so on. Protection of traditional cultural expressions in India is great. It is necessary for various reasons which underlie. Namely, the Yogyakarta has many culture of various kinds, so that there is potential for economic claims of ownership and use of the cultures by foreigners. Therefore, safeguards are needed in the form of regulatory mechanism and technical implementation. Protection based on copyright law cannot be realized because so far the local government doesn't have documentation and database that compiles the local culture to show their seriousness in protecting the traditional culture of indigenous people. The local government should form draft regional regulation that provides copyright on traditional cultural expressions. Of course, the documentation process must be carried out with respect to the will of the local community. If it doesn't want to cultural of the indigenous peoples to be documented for reason of secretness. Okay, now is conclusions. The conclusion is there's juridical efforts certainly require strong supporting evidence in documents, and of course there must be commitment from the country concerned about its culture. Actually, this conflict can be prevented by implementing a strategy of registering Indonesia culture become a World Cultural Heritage. UNESCO through the World Heritage Center by registering Indonesia culture as World Heritage. Indonesia and its culture activists will benefit from financial and technical assistance provided by UNESCO for the preservation of the cultures. The central and local government need to play an active role in identification, inventory, documentation, and registration activities. This role needs to be outlined in regulation in regulating the management and protection of culture in Indonesia. This regulation can take the form of improvements to existing intellectual property rights regulation as well as new regulations that specifically regulate the protection and use of traditional cultural expressions in Indonesia. It is better if the regulations on the protection and management of traditional cultural expressions also prioritize aspect of justice for indigenous people as the leader in the form of a benefit sharing agreement between the customary law community and other parties in the utilization of their traditional cultural expression. Maybe enough for me. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.